Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
A couple people sent me this story yesterday, and this is a really interesting story involving the church, the Catholic Church. And I want to be careful here because I understand that religion and faith and all that are very, very important to people. And I have the utmost respect for anybody who has a faith or a religious belief system or whatever. I will never, ever criticize anybody for their religious beliefs. And in fact, freedom of religion is one of the big things in the Constitution, Bill of Rights. So obviously religion is very, very important to people. But this story caught my attention because it seemed odd, but also because it has a legalistic angle to it. And this is from CBSnews.com, but it's been widely reported. A priest used one wrong word during baptisms. The church now says that thousands of those baptisms that he performed were invalid. They are now invalid. So if this priest baptized your child during the time frame we're talking about, that baptism doesn't count. So first we'll talk about the story. Norman and Ben both sent it to me. Thanks a lot. Natasha Leonard wrote the story for CBSnews.com. A Catholic priest in Phoenix has resigned now from his position after a church investigation found he had been incorrectly performing baptisms over a 20-year span, rendering those baptisms invalid for thousands of people, according to Bishop Thomas Olmsted of the Diocese of Phoenix. And yes, there's even a website that if this might affect you, you can go to the website and look it up. They got all the information there. We'll talk about that in a second. As he poured the holy water during the baptisms that he performed, the reverend would say, "We baptize you in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit." But he was using one wrong word because it's not "we baptize." It should have been "I baptize." It's singular, not collective. And getting that word wrong nullifies all of the baptisms he performed that way. So the bishop says, if you were baptized using the wrong words, that means your baptism is invalid and you are not baptized. You will need to be baptized. The issue with using "we" is that it is not the community that baptizes someone. It is Christ and Him alone who presides at all the sacraments. So it is Jesus Christ who baptizes. So I was the priest speaking on behalf of, as opposed to we speaking on behalf of a community. The Diocese of Phoenix added that it did not believe the Father had any intentions to harm the faithful or deprive them of the grace of baptism and the sacraments. So they're saying, look, it was an honest mistake, but the problem is the mistake has consequences. So the bishop says, I too am very sorry that this error has resulted in disruption to the sacramental lives of a number of the faithful. This is why I pledge to take every step necessary to remedy the situation for everyone impacted. He said that after a careful study by officials, all of the baptisms he performed up until June 17th of 2021 are presumed to be invalid. Baptisms performed by him after that date are presumed to be valid because they apparently did catch this and say, you need to change that word. And then apparently he did. Now, he had previously served in parishes in Phoenix, Brazil, and San Diego, according to the Catholic News Service. The diocese has created a website for anyone who believes their baptism was invalid, and that would be dphx.org. Look up valid baptisms. In a statement, the father asked his parishioners to forgive him and announced that he'd resigned as a pastor of the St. Gregory Parish in Phoenix, effective February 1st. It saddens me to learn that I performed invalid baptisms throughout my ministry as a priest by regularly using an incorrect formula. I deeply regret my error and how this has affected numerous people in your parish and elsewhere. I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience my actions have caused and genuinely ask for your prayers, forgiveness, and understanding. Dozens of people attended a farewell celebration for the Father in January, and some St. Gregory parishioners have launched a petition asking that he stay on. As part of his pastoral leadership, the Father reinvigorated the church community by renovating its facilities, giving parishioners and faith seekers a spiritual home that is open to all. The St. Gregory's community will never be the same without him. That's what the petition says. According to the Diocese of Phoenix, he remains in good standing as a priest, and he's not disqualified himself from his vocation and ministry. As of right now, other sacraments performed by him are considered valid. And that's the first question I had, is I was wondering if you'd somehow gotten anything wrong in any of the marriage ceremonies, if you conducted any of those. With the help of the Holy Spirit and in communion with the Diocese of Phoenix, I will dedicate my energy and full-time ministry to help remedy this and heal those affected. So if you go to the website dphx.org, valid baptisms, they ask the question rhetorically, if the Father didn't baptize me, but he provided me with one of my other sacraments, do I need to do anything? And it says here, as far as we know, the other sacraments he has conferred are valid. At this time, there is no reason for concern unless you're baptized by this particular father. So that's the issue. And it comes down to a very simple thing. And that is, someone brings their child in to be baptized. And they go through the baptism ceremony. And the father presiding says, we baptize you, as opposed to saying, I baptize you. And because of the incorrect word being used there, they're saying they're all invalid. And I'll admit, I don't know a whole lot about the Catholic Church because I'm not Catholic, but I've known people who are. I was a little surprised by this because if you think about this, okay, the people come in intending for their child to get baptized. Now, the child is too young to actually be thinking, boy, I want to be baptized, but the child is there. And the father is involved in this, and everybody thinks that the priest is intending to baptize the child. The parents are intending to get the child baptized. And everybody walks out of there thinking the child has been baptized. So two questions come to mind. One is, what if no one had caught this? Let's suppose that somebody had video recorded these, okay? And 50 years from now, somebody watches the videos and go, hey, that guy's getting that wrong. He's saying that one word wrong. All those baptisms are invalidated. And it seems like such a harsh result for such a simple problem. But the other thing is, and this gets back to what I said at the beginning about legalistic type things. And a lot of people will accuse attorneys and the courts and judges of being overly legal. That is, we're not so concerned about the truth. We're just, what about this comma here or this word here versus that word? And we split hairs and stuff. And interestingly, the law, in a lot of situations, would look at something like this in parallel, not in a religious setting, but in another setting and say, well, what did the parties intend? Now, I suspect the church is going to say, well, one of the parties is Jesus. And if Jesus Christ commands the pastor or the priest to use the word I versus we, and he does it wrong, well, that's the most important thing. And I understand that. But let me ask you a hypothetical, and I'm just invent a bunch of facts here for a scenario. Let's suppose that you are an officiant for weddings. You perform wedding ceremonies, okay? And you show up at a venue because you're going to perform a wedding ceremony. And you go inside, and it's a hall with really bad acoustics. So there's sounds echoing off everything. No matter how quiet people are, it still seems noisy. So the two people come up, you're going to have a wedding ceremony, and you have the whole thing, the rings, and at one point in time, you ask one person, do you take them to be your spouse? And they say something, but you didn't really hear it, but it's so loud that you just assume they said yes. And their partner kind of assumes they said yes, because then you ask them, and they say yes. I now pronounce you man and wife, husband and wife, whatever you want to go with. I now pronounce you married. You may kiss each other on the lips, okay? And after the wedding ceremony, some paperwork gets filled out and gets filed with the county to indicate that these people did in fact get married. So let's suppose 10 years down the road, surprise, surprise, things ain't working out. They're not getting along. One of them wants a divorce. And while they're thinking about this, they get kind of sentimental one night and they pull out the videotape. Yes, a videotape. Big old VHS videotape of the wedding. And they stick it in the VHS player, which they just happen to have for some odd reason. And they're watching it and they realize, wait, I didn't say yes when he asked me if I take that other person. I said, huh? And turns out the spouse said, huh? Neither of you said yes, but the priest, pastor, whatever, the officiant said, I now pronounce you man and wife. I now pronounce you, husband and wife, whatever it is. And you kissed, and you had a reception, and people got crazy, and the paperwork got filled out and was sent to the county, and you lived as husband and wife for 10 years, and now you want a divorce. Could you pull that tape out and go into court and say, I never said yes? Turns out I said the wrong word. No, of course you couldn't. Of course you couldn't. Because the words in a situation like that are not as important as the acts, especially if the acts demonstrate your willingness or your desire to do something. So if you think about all of the other things that happen when a couple is standing at the front getting married, they exchange rings, they exchange vows, they do all of this stuff. They did all of those things, but when asked, do you take, do you? And the officiant's not paying attention, just assumes it was a yes because he can't hear, bad acoustics. The words spoken in a setting like that actually don't matter that much compared to the actions you take and the paperwork being filed with the county. So I assume, because I saw somewhere in here, either in the story or in the website, a reference to baptismal records. And so if somebody fills out a form indicating the child's been baptized, and it's an official, an officiant, and they sign it, and if other people sign it as witnesses, and it gets filed presumably with somebody, and copies are made, and you've got a thing that says you've been baptized, I do find this a little unusual. Now, again, I'm not making fun of the church for doing this. I completely get their reasoning, but I was a little surprised by it because apparently this church went higher up and asked and said specifically, this priest was simply saying we instead of I for many years, baptizing many people. What do we do now? And they said, well, number one, going forward, make sure he says I instead of we. And number two, contact all the people purportedly baptized because they aren't anymore. And that just seemed a little bit over the top for me. But again, like I said, I'm not Catholic, and so I'm not part of this church. But as an outsider looking in, I was kind of surprised by this. And like I said, it does get me back to this whole idea that there are certain industries and certain vocations and certain places where people complain about the rules, and you live and die by rules, and it gets to the point where the rules govern something. And as an attorney, trust me, I've been hearing that for 30 years. And so I can tell you that there's a lot of settings where a parallel setting where somebody'd gone through the motions and thought something was true, later on it becomes true because you thought it was true. But I do get the distinction, but I was kind of surprised by it, that's all. So again, I am not making fun of the church. I'm simply pointing out that I found this a very interesting story, and I feel for the people who've got to go back and take care of this, because there probably will be some people quite troubled to discover that they thought they were baptized and they're not. And I know they have to now go and make the arrangements to go back in and get baptized. So there you go. So Norman and Ben both sent a thanks a lot. CBS News ran the story. Natasha Renaud wrote it. A priest used one wrong word during baptisms, and the church now says thousands of those baptisms are invalid. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Sunset is still my favorite color. Rainbow is second.